Child marriage is an issue that we have been advocating for such a long time, and this is the first place where it's actually criminalized. So for us, we feel it is a win. What we have is defilement, aggravated defilement, child-to-child sex, but we don't have it doesn't have an express provision which criminalizes it, the people who perform it or the people who attend such ceremonies. So for us, we felt that this is a huge win because it deals with an issue that affects the country.
Which is quite huge.
Yes,
quite
which
huge.
is
Child marriage is still prevalent.
Very much so.
Very deeply conservative.
Yeah. And if we don't have laws that
yes,
actively address child marriage, then it will continue to exist. The counseling that we know of is a counseling that takes away the autonomy and the individual decision making of many individuals within marriage, and then it prescribes rigid rules that people then feel they cannot deviate from, and this often causes abuse, especially in the face of a changing world where you have two people who are both working.
This is the Policy Digest, a Center for Policy Analysis podcast that explores how African societies are governed and how people and their leaders are shaping the future of their communities. Through candid conversations and insightful analysis, we aim to provide a deeper understanding of the political, economic, and social landscape of Africa. So sit back, relax, and get ready to explore the diverse and dynamic world of African governance.
Hello, you're most welcome to the Policy Digest, a podcast where we profile African leaders and ideas who are shaping the future of their communities. We come again to talk about something that is so pertinent as the Women's Month starts. So happy Women's Month to women. So let's start right into it. As you are well aware, the marriage bill, which was fronted by the Honorable Sarah Opendo Achieng, is at a committee stage and there are consultations that are happening. And in this podcast, we shall be looking at one of the critical civil society analysis that came up on the bill, which was from the Women Probono Initiative. And this publication is available on their website. As you can see a link just on your screen, you can be able to access that report. We shall be diving right into the issues that were raised in, and we see whether those ideas are good and why the committee or the MP did not consider them in the first place. In order to do that, we are joined by Rose Wakikoona. Have I pronounced the name well?
Yes, you've done better than most. Wakikoona Rose.
Wakikoona Rose. Okay. Rose Wakikoona is a distinguished Ugandan lawyer and human rights advocate with over a decade's experience in public interest litigation, focusing particularly on women's rights and sexual and reproductive health rights. She's an advocate of the High Court and all subordinate courts of Uganda. Currently, she serves as the Deputy Executive Director of the Women's Probono Initiative. And she's done quite a lot of litigation work. You can find quite a lot of this work in her public profile. You're most welcome, Rose, to this podcast.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. It's good to discuss this difficult topic.
Absolutely. We are happy to have you. Welcome from your master's, University of Pretoria, right?
Yes, University of
Could
Pretoria.
Could you tell us maybe the work that Women Probono Initiative does, such that we start into that and forward into the conversation?
Women's Probono Initiative was established in 2018. It was largely established to eliminate all discrimination for women and girls in Uganda. That is our driving mission. So we work on a wide range of things. Most of the time we use litigation. We do public interest litigation for cases that are gender attached, but then we also do a lot of pro bono for women who may have conflict with the legal justice system and may need a lawyer to represent them. So we do all that. So if any of you is out there and you need legal support and you know you cannot afford, then feel free to come to our offices and we shall be able to serve you. But we also do a lot of policy analysis, legal analysis. Usually we use a feminist lens to do a lot of this analysis. And we do a lot of publications, research that we do around these policies and laws. And the marriage bill is one of them. And the last that we do is around community awareness, where we go to the communities and actually educate people about their rights and how they can actually take back their autonomy.
That's good. And to the audience, just get the Women Probono website. Publications is a lot of public litigation data and cases that they're doing. You would benefit from that body of precedents that are set there. Maybe to just start right into the conversation. So I was reading the analysis that your organization made, and they start by talking about how the journey to having an actual marriage bill that is led by Africans, and in this case Ugandans, has taken for as long as Uganda has existed. So I wanted you to walk us down memory lane on how far we have come in terms of constituting a Ugandan-led legislation.
Yeah. So whenever people hear the marriage bill, they make the mistake of presuming that this is a process that was started just last year. It wasn't. Women have been at it for years and years and years. Even when people never thought that they had that awareness or that inkling, or they didn't know about maybe their rights within marriages, they've been at it trying to fight for equity and fairness within the marital sphere. You know, when you're talking about the feminist discourse, you're looking at the duality of life, where you have life that you live within the private sphere, but then life that you live within the public sphere. So what has happened in Uganda is that as we are advancing gender justice, we have advanced it a lot in the public, whereby we say, oh, now women can be leaders, women can go to school, women can work, we now have maternity leave. You know, in the public,
that
we
kind
have
of formal equality.
Yeah, almost a formal equality.
Not substantial.
Yeah. But then now when it comes to issues to do with the private, or where people where they privatize their lives, where they're like, with this, I am in charge. There is a lot of hierarchies that exist. And that is where family usually exists, and it's where marriage usually exists. So it's almost like a front that we need to now break down and say that even as we are guaranteeing equality for women in the public space, we need to guarantee equality for women in the private space. But that has proved extremely difficult. Why? Because we have a lot of gender roles, and the gender roles start from families, where they are always telling you, even in class as young as P2, P3, oh, the father is the head of the family. The mother, you're the neck. So you just turn the head, you turn the head, and then the children, you're also prescribed with your roles and your responsibilities. So there are very strict roles and responsibilities that exist within a family. And many feminists, including myself, have been fighting to deconstruct some of these gender roles because they are proving to be a burden, and it's where a lot of abuse stems from. So this journey started in 1964. When we had just become independent in 1962, they commissioned a report under the Obote government where they were supposed to look at women's rights, women empowerment, and the situation of the family in Uganda. So they commissioned a report, it was tabled, and the report actually called for an overhaul of the family laws at that particular time. Of course, touching children, succession, marriage, divorce, everything. But then the report was tabled because I think there were more important things, as always happens with women's issues. They just put it on the side. Like, let us move on. So it died until around 2003 when they tabled now the domestic relations bill, So the domestic relations bill was tabled in 2003, and it actually raised a lot of issues, and it tried to create an atmosphere of equality for men and women within families, but then it seemed so radical and controversial. First of all, because it was trying to legitimize cohabitation and provide for rights for people who are in cohabiting relationships. But then it also tried to deal with matrimonial property. It also tried to criminalize the demand for the refund of bride price.
Bride price, yes.
So people are like, no, you people want to destroy families. We cannot allow. So again, it was shelved. Then in 2009, another version came up. That was the now Marriage and Divorce Bill. So now when the Marriage and Divorce Bill came in, people said, they have come back again. But this time they want to add marriage and divorce together. If you add marriage and divorce together, that means you want to break families and encourage women to leave their husbands. Why don't you separate the two? So
and
again,
a divorce bill and a marriage bill all together.
To have them separately.
Yeah.
So again, then now they tabled later on, I think it was in 2012, a separate marriage bill, but then they brought it alongside a Mohammedan bill, which was now dealing with the Muslims alone. And so again, that was also shut down. And now again, the bill is coming back with a new face and a new person who is moving it. But ultimately, what it contains within itself is the same need to guarantee the rights that are given to all human beings under Article 31 on the right to found a family.
I get you. And I think different people have laid their bricks. And I think the very nature of progress or of advocacy is that a person runs this mile and then another person picks up the baton. So still, as I read through the analysis you did present, I noted that you had indicated that you had serious issues with the bill requiring people to obtain parental consent if they are to have a Christian marriage go through. Would you like to take us through your thought line or thought processes?
Yeah. So in our analysis, we clearly state that there are very many things that are good with the bill. And even before I delve into those things which are bad, because I never want to start from a bad side, people will say, this bill is bad in its entirety, let's throw it away. But at the same time, there are parts of the bill that are actually liberating for women and things that we have been crying for.
Okay.
I think the first one is around child marriage. Child marriage is an issue that we have been advocating for such a long time. And this is the first place where it's actually criminalized. So for us, we feel it is a win. What we have is defilement, aggravated defilement, child-to-child sex. But we don't have, it doesn't have an express provision which criminalizes it, the people who perform it or the people who attend such ceremonies. So for us, we felt that this is a huge win because it deals with an issue that affects the country.
Which is quite huge.
Yes,
quite
which
huge.
is
child marriage is still prevalent.
Very much so.
Very deeply conservative.
Yeah. And if we don't have laws that
actively
address child marriage, then it will continue to exist.
Yeah,
and
especially
we need
directly, right?
Yes,
so
and we need to
law
delink the adult marriages from the child marriages. Otherwise, then there is a presumption that these child marriages can be fed under this.
And I know you
particular
litigate in that direction. What laws do you, for example, use to do public interest litigation?
So the laws that we use, it is majorly the Penal Code Act, which deals with defilement. It also deals with rape, also child-to-child sex. But then we also use the Anti-Trafficking Act, which also deals with sexual exploitation. But then it's very hard to read child marriage into trafficking.
So you have to create parallels and contrasts.
Exactly.
So a more direct law
would help us to, like, this is it, this is a crime, let's move on.
I get you.
So child marriage is one of the biggest issues. Another one, as someone who actively litigates divorce cases, the two biggest issues when it comes to divorce are, number one, property, and number two, children. Children have been dealt with by and large under the Children's Act.
Yeah.
So it's not very hard to determine which child should stay with which parent should stay with a child.
Yeah.
But then the issue of property is that there is no law that addresses matrimonial property.
Yeah.
We only have case law where judges have talked about particular issues here and there,
Oh,
but
so
then it's not
it's
cohesive.
from case law,
yes,
not from
and
a very
it means that one judge can depart from that decision because it's not a standard that has been set.
I get
so we've always struggled with matrimonial property. I know people look at it and say, women want to come and steal our property. But I want to assure the public, even women have property to protect. We have come a long way in being empowered.
To think that is only
so
men who have
matrimonial property is not just for the man, it is also for the woman. So when we are distributing joint property
which we have all worked for.
Yeah, and I've seen on Twitter people always saying, I will only marry a woman who works. Why do you marry a woman who works? Because she comes with assets. She comes with monetary value that she adds to the family.
To the table,
so if we are distributing, we should stop looking at it in that linear way.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
That's okay.
Yeah,
so you talk about matrimonial property. How exactly does this bill address that very concept?
So this particular bill actually defines what matrimonial property is. So it allows you as an individual who is married to purchase property outside the marriage.
That's a
so
win.
You can
That's a
own
very
property
huge win.
individually, but then at the same time, matrimonial property is limited to property where you live or where you derive sustenance as a family. So it creates that clear, distinction. Boundary. Or property that you buy intending for it to be matrimonial property. So you have to now bring evidence that shows that the intention that
buying
this
that property
was for it to be
to nourish or sustain the family.
So that would mean you have to show either you lived there or you were working there and getting money as a family, or you jointly purchased it. So you have to demonstrate that the intention was for it to become matrimonial property in the first place. But then it also protects property that you inherit. So if I am maybe a daughter, my father leaves for me property, that property is taken away from the matrimonial property. It remains my property, except now if I convert it into matrimonial property. But then also property that I come into the marriage with is protected. So that
just
remains
a bit of a
mine.
question there. What was the status quo before we began conversations to move in that direction?
So the status quo was chaos. Because there was no standard.
I get you.
Yeah, so it was depending on a judge and how well the lawyer argued or how good the evidence was. So one judge would say, if you contributed, another one was like, oh no, like everyone had their own
what you
standard.
Inherited is for the family.
The only standard we had was that if you were married and there was property that any of you owned, somehow it could be construed as matrimonial property in one way or another. So now you had to argue from the point of view taking away. It starts as matrimonial property, then you argue to take away from the fact that it is not matrimonial property. But now the line is clearly stated.
That's good. That's good. The grey line is erased. So you talked about the win on child marriage.
Yes.
You said we should first talk about the things, right?
The good things.
The good things, right?
Yes.
Win on matrimonial property.
And also the clarity on consent to marry, the age of marriage. The Constitution places it at 18, but then unfortunately the marriage acts that we have, the Marriage Act has it at 21, then the Customary Registration Act has it at 16, so there's a bit of
serious inconsistencies.
Yeah, very
21.
Inconsistent.
I read somewhere in your analysis that the moment this bill comes into play, it's going to knock off the validity.
All of them will be completely repealed, and this will be the only law that exists. So that harmony in the age of marriage also helps, especially in dealing with issues like child marriage, which I thought. So I think those are the major ones that I would think I can raise now. You can raise now.
That's good. People can read the analysis in case they want to see other wins, right? Okay, let's now get into the other parts. You know, ready to
yes, I'm
get
ready.
there. So you say clause 5, part D indicates that parental consent must be secured in the case of a Christian marriage. You dissent against that position as the women movement. Would you like to walk us through your thought processes and why you believed we needed to descend.
Our view is that it's very paternalistic.
By paternalistic, you mean?
Now, to simplify
For the audience,
you're making adults seem like children, and you're trying to dictate for them what they can or cannot do. Our constitution says that you become an adult when you turn 18. When you turn 18, you can make medical decisions concerning your body. If you want to have a C-section, you can sign a document. It's individualized. If you want to enter a contract, you
don't call your parents.
No, you don't call your parents. You go sign on your own. If you want to buy land, if you want to enter employment at 18, you don't even call anyone. Even your employer will not say, you first sit there. Let me call your mother and I see if you are ready to work. But when it comes to marriage, why is it so different? Why is it so different? These are adults. We should not infantilize people.
Adults, yes.
And make them seem as if they are young people. If I am the one who has gone into the public, I've hunted for my own husband, he has proposed to me without my parents' help. He proposed to me on his own. We are now ready to start a family. Where do the parents come in to now tell me that the lion I hunted from the jungle,
the bush,
is not enough for me?
It's not enough. You need one with more hair on the face.
This is, we are not children. So our basis was from that, but it also comes from the fact that the Constitution within itself, under Article 31, individualizes consent to marry. It doesn't say that you can consent and marry with your parents. No, it says a person at the age of 18 can consent and marry. So it is individualized. It is not, you can't obtain consent through parents. Even things like family planning. When you go to a hospital, a woman must sign on her own, even when she's married, even when she has a husband. Ideally, the papers, she signs them on her own. So consent, when you're an adult, is an individual thing. I know that practically people have been practicing parental consent, especially religiously, where they say, no, bring a letter from the parents. But also this has been problematic, largely because the consent was only required of women. It was never required of men. So a woman who is becoming a wife, you're expected to bring a letter from your father, but the man is not expected to do that. But for us, we feel that this should be left as a practice, and a practice that is then continuously.
As a norm for people in the Christian household.
Let them make it as a practice. It is okay for you to practice your religion, and no one should stop you from doing that. And if you feel that you need your parents' blessing, then let it be. Yeah. But then you cannot create a standard that takes away people's rights, which are unconstitutional.
Could there be scenarios where that specific prerogative can be abused, either by parents?
We've seen it in the past where people have denied consent on grounds of tribalism, because someone is not rich enough, maybe they are not of the same class or standard, maybe the girl is too wealthy, the boy is not wealthy enough, or vice versa. Parents have abused this consent before. Sometimes they feel you're too young, but for you, you're ready to marry and meet life. So it shouldn't be taken away from you.
Or from a different tribe. There are so many things they normally consider. Let's say, let's run the thought experiment. Assuming Parliament passes this clause as it is, what would that mean exactly?
That means that anyone who is procuring a Christian marriage must secure parental consent,
in writing,
whether or not you have parents. Well, and that is also where the problem lies, because some people may be orphans. So are you going to resurrect your parents from the grave so that they can sign?
Your relationship with your parent is dismal, it's not poor.
Oh, they ran away from you and abandoned you long time ago. Where are you going to get it from? So it creates a standard.
That's
and unfortunately, even when you read that bill, the standard has no exceptions. So they don't say except where the person maybe has no parents, parents, maybe the consent is arbitrarily withheld. They don't have all that. They just create one standard, please bring parental consent, or else there is no marriage. And what that means is that your marriage, even when you go ahead to marry, through the Christian faith, it won't be valid.
Can't be solemnized under the law.
They may solemnize it, but it won't be valid. So when a person can just go and petition to court and say, my parents never consented, therefore that marriage is invalid, and that will be the end. And all rights that accrue to you as a married person suddenly collapse.
Suddenly turn into vapor. That's quite a prerogative, and I think people need to be aware. And unfortunately, I don't know whether people know these things, do they? But it's our role, right? Okay, let's forward into the concept on cohabitation. So I did follow your processions when you are in front of the committee in Parliament. Your team, you were leading them, right?
I was.
Your face looked like you were the one.
It was plastered all over the newspaper. I was abused by the whole country.
I did follow through. Another, I think, opinion from the Interreligious Council of Uganda, Church of Uganda, I think even Pastor Semper, who are on the other side of cohabitation, that it should be criminalized. Why, in your opinion, as a women movement, did you say cohabitation as a practice
because the statistics
should not be criminalized?
Because the statistics of the Uganda Bureau of Statistics, they presented a report, I think it was in 2022, on household surveys, and they were querying what type of marriages people have, and discovered that 27% of people living in unions are actually cohabiting. And they are the majority. The next cadre were people in customary marriages, and these were 25%. The religious marriages were actually only 9%.
They were the minority.
They were the minority of it all. So my question then becomes, if we are legislating for the context right now is that most people are cohabiting.
It's the truth.
Are we going to carry all of them and take them to jail?
That's
even the few prisoners we have right now, Luzira can't manage. We are always overcrowding, over what? But the other part is, who is going to report? These people are consensually. Again, we go back to the concept of adulthood. People have agreed to live together and form a family and have children and buy property together. They don't need an endorsement from society to show that what they have is a family. If they recognize it as a family, then the state must recognize it as a family. I know women who begin even calling themselves Muchala so-and-so, Muchala so-and-so, because they've started living in what they presume to be a family. So who endorses a family? Is it the two people who have started it, or is it society?
Is it a mosque?
So society cannot dictate to us how our families look like. The purpose of the law is to protect people who are within these families and ensure that there is equity and justice, even when maybe things do not go right. So for us, we feel that families start with the people who form them, which is the two of them.
Two people who consent,
and if within their mind, they are behaving as if they have formed a family, then by all means, we must all look at it as a family.
I just have a follow-up question. So there are privileges that are enshrined in the law by people who solemnize their marriage. And I think you do a lot of litigation in this area for couples who haven't yet solemnized the marriage legally, get certificate and all. Are there challenges that come with things like matrimonial property or protection of some rights?
Yeah.
And do you think, for, let's say, like a shred of hope that if this clause were to come through, then that problem would be erased, if it exists in the first place?
It does. First of all, for us, our stand is that the marriage laws right now don't guarantee enough rights for the parties that are married. We feel that maybe the privileges should extend beyond what currently we have right now. Sure. What you have in terms of rights when you get married is the right to consortium. That is the right to have sex, live with each other, have children and parent them together as a family. We have what they call proof of parentage, in that every child that is born within that marriage belongs to the two of you. So you can only petition court to take away that particular declaration.
Right.
But also we have land rights, where you say that a person cannot then sell property without consulting you. That's also a privilege that is awarded. You have succession rights as a wife or a husband, that if my spouse dies, then I can be able to inherit from them. Another thing that is given is what they call the next of kin rights, where to make decisions on your behalf in case you are incapacitated, in case you... So those are some of the rights that are given to you when you're married. If you're not married legally, those rights don't accrue to you. So if, for example, my partner woke up tomorrow and sold the land where we are living and I don't consent, I can't claim that privilege in law and say, no, he sold but without my consent. If I can't demonstrate I am a spouse, then I cannot claim that right. So that is where the problem begins to. But then here we are looking at it from a perspective that already we've been living together. This is a home which is housing me, my children. He comes every day. We are living as if we are a family. So the take is that then why don't we treat it as if it is a family? I know religious leaders want to maintain control over families.
Absolutely.
Because now the registrars of marriages under this bill have been extended to include religious leaders. So they have the power to decide who is married or who is not married. And they want to wield that power and exercise that control over people, over their families, and then dictate now how marriages should be run, what you need to do in order to be in a marriage and things like that. So it's about control, in my opinion. And they are trying to criminalize marriage cohabiting couples because they want them to then move to the part which is under their control. So that then they can amass more popular support and probably even get more offerings in their churches. So for me, that is the way I look at it. It's about controlling. Because if you opt out of the legal marriage, then it means that you're not reporting to any registrar, you're not reporting to any church, you're not reporting to any code of conduct for what your marriage should look like. Because before you enter a Christian or an Islamic marriage, there is a code of conduct. And that code of conduct is told to you through premarital counseling, which we are also against.
And we're going to come to that in the second episode of this podcast.
So that code of conduct is a weapon of control.
That's true.
That is exercised. And unfortunately, it creates hierarchies within a marriage. I know people always say, there must always be a leader, there must always... But you can also exercise co-leadership. And it is something that can happen. That can happen. And has happened, and it just means that people are opting out. Some because they want, but others because they don't want. But then we also have to recognize that marriages in Uganda are quite expensive. I know people must marry because, and you can't only go through one ceremony. You have to go through around 4 ceremonies.
4, 3.
From the kuchala, then you go to the kwanjula, then from the kwanjula, then you go to the marital ceremony formally. So it's expensive. All that takes money. You must dress up. You need to hire a photographer. You must cook food. You must invite people. It's a lot of...
Your relatives are relatives.
And too many negotiations. Some people still demand for bride price. I know now they call them gifts. But if you're demanding for them, then it ceases to be a gift because you say, write a list of all the things we are taking to the parents. That's almost like a demand. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist as a standard.
I come from a very conservative. It is their demands really. Without meeting them.
And then they refuse. I will not write the letter that goes to the church. I will not write the letter. We've been in such situations because you haven't oiled the wheels of the justice.
Okay. Let's just take a break and then we shall forward into the second episode where we are able to look at the concept of premarital counseling and divorce and what this bill says about it.
The Center for Policy Analysis is an independent think tank shaping parliamentary democracy, governance, and public policy in Uganda and beyond. Our mission is to shape public policy and strengthen democratic governance by delivering high-quality research, fostering collaboration, and empowering citizens. Our vision is a democratic society with transparent, accountable, and responsive governance systems. What sets SEPA apart? A unique consortium model that integrates expertise from diverse partners for multidisciplinary approaches. We pioneer thought leadership, leveraging tools like artificial intelligence to enhance impact. Through collaborative advocacy, we empower stakeholders to engage with legislative processes, all while combining rigorous research with a deep understanding of Uganda's political economy. Our flagship initiatives include Parliament Watch Uganda, that bridges the gap between the citizens and Parliament, the Policy Digest podcast that explores politics and public affairs across Africa, and the SEPA Convo, our bi-monthly X-Space tackling key public issues. Our work spans parliamentary democracy, human rights, public health, road safety, climate justice, artificial intelligence, and more, including the Africa Regional Conference on Parliament and Legislation. Join SEPA in shaping policies, amplifying voices, and building a democratic future. Visit www.sepa.or.ug to learn more or follow us on social media. The Center for Policy Analysis, a leading public policy think tank.
We'll be back. We are continuing to discuss the analysis of the women movement on the marriage bill that was fronted by the Honorable Sarah Opendia Chiang. And like we said in the first episode, in the second episode, we are going to look at very, very, very crucial aspects of premarital counseling. So it was mentioned, and as you can see, the tweet that is being displayed on the screen, that premarital counseling has a few issues that the women's movement have a problem with, and I wanted Rose to take us through what those issues are and what their thoughts were.
Yeah. So counseling within itself is not bad, and as someone who works around separation, divorce, custody, children, I feel there is a place for counseling. But then the problem is the yardstick. What are you using to counsel people? Because the counseling that we traditionally know, especially the one that's based on religion and that's based on culture, is one that reinforces patriarchal norms. So they will tell you things like, the man is the head. For you, the woman, you're the neck. You're his support. Omukazi aguma. Never deny a man's sex. So they reinforce a lot of patriarchal norms that end up causing abuse for women within marriage. So it's all about okuguma, but ngume pakadi. If I am being beaten,
they never define that boundary.
They never define where it is enough for kuguma. Like nkomawa, where do I stop in me exercising my patience? If I am living with someone who is physically abusing me, who is raping me, who is treating me like trash, who is financially abusive, who is threatening to deny me my children, like, where does it end when you're exercising patience? And also they begin to prescribe roles within a marriage. Oh, the man is the provider. Musajja bulijjo olina okulekawo essente z'akameeza. At least omutwalo bulijjo. What if you haven't made that 10,000 in a day? They prescribe roles. Omukazi yafumba. Your husband should never eat food from another woman. Like, gwali no kufumba. So even if I come back from work at 7, ntandikira mufumbiro.
And you're tired.
Exactly.
Well,
and now for us who are lawyers,
Mm.
they tell you things like, gwenga lawyer, leave your law degree outside.
I've heard of that. I've really
leave
heard
your,
of that.
like, how do I, should I behead my, and then just enter? Like, how exactly does it
work?
Go
through a brainwashing ceremony.
Exactly. So
home, right?
it is the counseling that we know of is a counseling that takes away the autonomy and the individual decision making of many individuals within marriage, and then it prescribes rigid roles that people then feel they cannot deviate from. And this often causes abuse, especially in the face of a changing world where you have two people who are both working. Maybe the woman goes earlier than the man. She can't lay the bed because she always leaves him in the bed. Maybe she comes back later than him at 9 p.m. What are you doing going to the... You cannot cook. Like, even the world itself is changing. We now have washing machines. I don't have to wash clothes. I just throw them in a machine and they wash themselves. I throw them in another machine.
Man can also throw.
They dry. So it is too archaic in the way that it constructs marriages.
Yeah, sure.
And it leaves a big, huge breeding ground for abuse. And this we have seen in the huge instances of domestic violence that we have, that even necessitated us to pass a Domestic Violence Act because it had become so much. People were being beaten in their marriages because they wanted to be put back in their position where the men felt that they were actually running from. So our challenge with premarital counseling is, what is the yardstick? Are we having counseling that is going to emphasize the rights of women, emphasize the conflict resolution, decision making, that is the core between two people, complementing each other rather than creating hierarchies within a marriage that will instead lead to abuse? So that is where our problem comes from.
I get that. I debate quite a bit. So as part of debating, sometimes we're asking ourselves if the feminist movement should either concentrate on breaking down traditional structures that exist of power, or whether they should try and engage them such that they can adopt feminist practices. So should we either ban the entire institution of let's say that the marriage institution as was formed by either African society or Christian society, or should they advocate that certain feminist practices are imbibed within those very religions? So if we were to run a thought experiment, how would a coherent premarital counseling look like that is feminist and is not abusing the principles and the journey we've come as a civilization of equality? Yes.
So on that, there are different types of feminisms. There are feminists who believe that marriage within itself is inherently patriarchal. Therefore, as an institution, it should be wiped away, thrown into the dustbin, and we all live laissez-faire.
I think at Cambridge Union.
So it exists. And then there are feminists who are more conservative in their approach, where they think that no, marriage within itself, it provides stability within society. And therefore, we need to just change the way the institution looks like, but not take away the entire institution within itself. So it depends on which feminist you are. For me, I am a great believer in autonomy. Decide if you want marriage, please proceed. If you don't want, please opt out. That is up to you. The Constitution gives us that autonomy.
Is it like, what sort of thing do you buy into? Yeah. The one which is reformed, or opting into the one which is not reformed?
For me, either way, I don't think it really matters whether the marriage exists or it doesn't exist. The challenge is there abuse within the marriage? How do we then correct the abuse? Because for me, the way I understand the law is there to protect. So if you're to protect, you're looking at this institution, because even if I, as Rose said, that no, I don't believe in marriage should be taken away, I should throw it in the dustbin, will marriage cease to exist? No, I am just one person in a sea of 45 million Ugandans. So again, even when I go back to my office, the bulk of our cases, almost 90% of the cases at WPI, are concerning marriage. Children, custody, like they always stem from marriage. Even if it is land, it will always usually stem from a marriage or a relationship somewhere. So then I think the way I think about it in a bigger picture is, since people are still opting into marriage, how then do we protect them and ensure that the power imbalances are properly corrected? So for me, that is always...
I get you.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, I think it's the fastest book I've ever read. Must have been like 30 minutes. Dear Ijewere by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie.
Yes.
So she's trying to tell. I don't know whether Ijewere was a real daughter or her daughter, but
She had her daughter after her.
after her. So let's say real or imagined, and is talking to them, right? With regards to you're no less than a man. You don't have cooking genes, like anyone can cook, that kind of thing. So, assuming you had your own, imagine like a character, maybe. Do we want to name them Joanne? And only they want to get into marriage, and you want to, counsel them. You want to give them a feminist counseling, marital counseling. How would it look like?
I think mine would be to, it has to be more of a partnership. I know the way marriage is perceived is a lot of, there are too many, I know I've said this word so many times, but I will repeat it, because feminism is about addressing power imbalances.
Yes.
And often the power imbalances are not in favor of the woman. So it's about, if you're entering a partnership, and this time it is a marriage, like what sort of autonomy do I maintain in this relationship? I once had a case where a woman had to wait for 3 days for her husband to come and consent for her to have a C-section. I couldn't imagine it. And it's not that the hospital, it wasn't even that the hospital required the man's consent.
It was the woman
It was an internal feeling that she couldn't consent to a C-section in the absence of her husband. And what had happened is that the man came in on the first day, and I think because she was in labor pains, it wasn't very clear. They had a bit of a fight, and he ran away from the hospital, switched off all his phones. And he's like, they'll reach out to me when the baby is born. Unfortunately, as the labor was progressing, everything just went haywire. The baby went into distress. She was not dilating. And now, as the doctors were telling her, we need to give you a C-section, she's like, I can't decide without my husband. Now, for me, every time I reflect on that story, that is not a situation a woman should not be in. The question you should ask yourself is, in that marriage, am I capable of making an independent decision in the absence of this man? And if the answer is yes, then you're okay. Because that means that ultimately you can address abuse if it happens, and you can make decisions that are good for you. But even to the point of death, where you're waiting for another person to decide on your behalf and infantilize you to the point of being a child. That's very, very unhealthy. And unfortunately, that is what most marriage counseling promotes, that you should be to that level of submission, that your husband is your all in all. He's the one who decides everything for you. But what does that look like practically?
Yeah, it means you losing quite a lot of your individual rights.
Exactly.
And no, I don't think you can justify limiting anyone's rights, even if they give them to you voluntarily. Even then, there's something fundamentally wrong with that. You
ultimately have to liberate yourself. But even as you liberate yourself, you must be in a relationship that allows you to be liberated.
I get you. So I understand there were a number of issues around how the bill was named in the past. You said it started with domestic relations bill, and then later marriage and divorce bill. So let's deal with the divorce aspects of the bill. Do you think that the current bill has covered enough ground to speak to the needs of the women movement with regards to the protection of rights of the woman during divorce, but also to deal away with the standards of proof for you to procure a divorce when you want?
I think so, because it has reduced the grounds of divorce into one. So all you have to do is demonstrate that there is an irretrievable breakdown of their marriage. So you don't have to run around in circles. Before, I think we had about 3 grounds. Okay. So you had to either prove adultery or cruelty or desertion. and desertion had to be after 2 years. So you had to fit all your facts into those 3 grounds. Whether
Did you have to meet all the 3 or you just need to meet
just one? All you needed was one. So you can either prove adultery or cruelty or desertion, and the divorce will be granted. But now it means that it is opened up to very many more instances of what contains like a breakdown of a marriage.
An irretrievable breakdown of marriage.
Yes. So you just have to show court that like this marriage has been on a downward trajectory. I can no longer live with this person. Because as we always argue, like what one person can stand, another person cannot.
Stand, yeah.
So another person may withstand adultery even multiple times and they won't have an issue. But another person just even having an emotional affair with another person may be
a problem.
But yet when you go and read into adultery, if it is an emotional affair, you cannot plead it in your pleadings because it didn't engage with real actual sex. So I feel by reducing it to that one ground, it made it easier for people to opt out of marriages. And I know very many people have a problem with that. But what I want us to understand is that no one enters marriage wanting to get out. By the time a person comes to my office, it's not on a whim. It's because they've been through a lot. Most of the people want their marriages to work.
So by the time
and we have to legislate from that point that they actually want the marriage to work.
No one willingly wants
No one willingly says, oh, now I'm tired of this marriage. Let me go and look for another husband. As if you just pluck them from trees. It doesn't happen like that. It does not. People always have their issues. They may sound flimsy to you, but people have
those issues matter to them. Yeah.
They matter a lot. Like right now, I'm dealing with a case where a woman has a problem where she's unable to have painless sex. And as soon as she entered the marriage, every day it's as if the husband is raping her. After 2 months, she ran away. But then in our current divorce act, she has no grounds.
Yeah, there's no ground in that situation.
She has absolutely no grounds because you can't plead cruelty. It's not as if he's forcing her. They are just trying to make it work, but somehow it is just not working. It's not adultery. He has not. They have actually consummated it, but the consummation is proving to be cruel. Like it is harming her.
It is harming her, yes.
So divorce comes in different ways and spaces. And in all my entire 10 years of litigating around family law, no woman has just come to me saying, oh, I want to divorce because I want to steal that man's property. No, it always comes with years of trying again and failing and trying and failing until they reach a point they're like, you know what? I just cannot anymore. I cannot. Another big issue that is coming out in divorces is around financial abuse, which now cannot be recognized in our domestic act, rather in our divorce act, where you find that very many women are bearing the burden of providing for their families. So you enter a marriage thinking, I've married a sensible person. Now our bills are going to be maybe shared at the very least. Only to find out the person just wakes up, sits on video games the whole day, he's driving your car, eating your food, you're paying school fees, you're paying rent. And on top of that, he expects you to carry your roles as a wife. So you must cook, clean, lay the bed.
Sing for him.
It's like, what am I doing? So women are opting out of some of this. They are leaving those boys. I don't even want to call them men. They are leaving them behind.
Yeah.
But now when you try to fit them within our current divorce act, because that is financial abuse. Yes. It cannot. And when you're trying to talk to the boys' family, they're like, you married him when you know now. See, so we need to recognize that people don't divorce because they want
willingly,
to.
They don't wake up and want
and
to
therefore
divorce.
When you're proving irretrievable breakdown of marriages, for me, I think it helps people to painlessly come out of a bad situation without having to exaggerate.
Any that we know or may emerge one day.
And also our current divorce act, I feel, is aggravating the divorces and making them more hostile. which is impacting on children. So people have to paint themselves in the worst possible picture.
You have to like frame
you must show that this person, even when like it wasn't that bad, you must show it was very bad. And that creates hostility, it creates enmity, in that even where people would have parted amicably, because maybe they've just fallen out of love, they have to now become combative. Where they look for reason and the people who suffer are the children. It's always the children who are forced to take sides, who are forced to testify against their parents, who are forced to talk ill about their parents. Yet this would have been handled very simply. Another part of the act that I feel they handle very well is the fact that they allow for people to jointly petition court for a divorce. So the two of, if maybe you and I are married, we just go together to court and say this is a joint petition. We are tired of each other. Divorce us.
And they will accept.
And they will accept it.
What was the previous practice?
The previous was you have to be combative. So you can't collude, you cannot connive. So you must not show that you in any way want to help each other divorce each other. You must show that you're hostile towards each other. So
come
it was
with reasons, say how you guys
so you must paint yourself in the worst possible picture.
In those three
and yet now all you need to say is that really it's just not working out. Maybe we are on different paths, we are facing in different directions, we have maybe clashed on a few things that we feel cannot be cured, and we want court to divorce us, which I also feel is in line with Article 31 of the Constitution, which recognizes that individual autonomy, that just the way I opted into this marriage, then I should be allowed to opt out. Yes, knowing that people don't take marriage and divorce lightly. At least I've never met a client who takes it lightly.
Okay, even if you've never met them, people the way they are wedding or it's always Marys and bells and flowers and others. They want
it to work. Most people desire for this relationship to work because marriage has so many benefits for so many people. Yeah. They get social status. If you're unmarried in this society, you're abused, you can't even sit with the elders to make decisions. You must go to the kitchen and cook while they are praying for you to get married. So it gives them that status.
Absolutely.
Also,
by the
when
time someone loses it,
then
they can no longer stand it.
You get that shame and the stigma that goes along with being a divorced. It's as if you have failed at your primary role as a woman, and women bear that shame a lot. That's why people don't publicly divorce. They divorce in quiet but marry in public because of the stigma and shame that comes with it. So why would you think someone would subject themselves to that on a whim? But we need to make it as painless as possible. If only for the children, let us make it divorce as painless and as amicable.
Even for both of them, possible. But for the children, most important.
For the children especially. So that the parents can continue co-parenting in an atmosphere that is not hostile.
In a healthy way. And I think that's why even co-parenting is struggling because by the time you are portraying a divorce,
badly.
Like you can't divorce
badly. But it's because of the system of divorce which doesn't allow people to divorce amicably.
Thank you so much for coming on this podcast. Do you have any parting shots for the audience and any good words for us in the Women's Month?
I think the only thing I have to tell people is you need to read the bill. You may not be married, you may be married happily, but until you need the law, you may not think it is important. So read the law. See how it impacts you. But then another thing, maybe it may not be part of the bill, is maybe a call to religious leaders, I think, to be a little bit more practical when they are handling issues of marriages. I've told many religious leaders before that you always need to involve divorce lawyers in marital counseling so that they can tell people their rights and how people can be able to...
they're selling one perspective,
they are only selling the googly eyes about marriage, but then they are not selling the other side of how do you protect yourself when I'm in this institution? How does it work?
I don't know. Is there a church which does that? I don't think there's any church.
They don't even consult lawyers. But I think as part of marital counseling, if it is a practice they want to carry, then ask the couple to go and visit someone who does family law to explain to them, because very many people operate in marriages but with a lot of ignorance.
A lot of
ignorance.
It, yeah.
And now when they need the law to come in and help them, you find they've committed so many mistakes, and it's difficult to rectify. So our religious leaders, please be a bit more practical in the way that you handle marriages, knowing that it's not just a religious institution, but it's also a legal institution with real repercussions on people's lives.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. You didn't give anything for that. For us in the Women's Month. You don't want to give us a dose of your energy. Please.
Oh God, for the Women's Month, I don't know what to say.
One power line, punchline, and we call it.
Do I have anything to say about the women? I don't have anything to say.
No worries, but I think you've said a lot already over the last 1 hour.
Support our bill. Okay, no parts of it, not all of it.
The ones which empower women. Any that disempower women, please don't. Thank you so much, Ms. Rose Wakikoona, for coming to this podcast. It was an honor having you and to our audience. It was our privilege to walk you through the beginning of the Women's Month. I hope you remember about the women that have made you, your mothers, your leaders that are shaping the communities. And we shall be profiling people that are making progress in that direction in this month. And follow all our platforms on YouTube, the Center for Policy Analysis, TikTok, SEPA_UG, still on X, PWatchUG, and we shall share breathtaking content that shall keep you glued as a citizen to your duties and responsibilities. Thank you. My name is Joseph.
Thank you for listening to the Policy Digest, a Center for Policy Analysis podcast that explores how African societies are governed and how people and their leaders are shaping the future of their communities. For more podcasts, check out our Podbean and YouTube platforms. Thank you.